My name is Isabella Martinez-Walsh, and 3 months ago I thought I understood what family meant. I'm 31, an artist living in Portland, Oregon, and until my mother-in-law took a crowbar to my life's work while screaming about whose art really mattered, I believed that marriage meant joining a family that would support your dreams. The sound of canvas tearing and wood splintering still echoes in my mind, not because it broke me, but because it freed me from pretending that people who never saw my worth deserved access to my world. I met James Walsh 4 years ago at a coffee shop in the Pearl District. He was reading about architecture while I sketched afternoon light falling across strangers' faces. When he saw my drawing, his genuine amazement felt like recognition. "You see things differently," he said. For the first time in years, someone saw my art and understood it was more than a hobby. James came from what he called an artistic family. His mother, Patricia Walsh, had run a small gallery for 15 years. His father collected vintage photographs. His younger brother David painted abstract pieces that James described as raw and emotional. I was excited to meet them, imagining conversations about technique and inspiration. The first family dinner should have been a warning. Patricia greeted me politely but spent most of the evening discussing David's upcoming cafe show. When James mentioned I was also an artist, her response was measured. "How nice. What kind of art do you do?" I explained that I worked primarily in oil paintings, focusing on portraiture and urban landscapes. Patricia nodded and immediately turned back to David. "Your brother's abstract work is so powerful. There's something about non-representational art that reaches deeper into the soul." The dismissal was subtle but clear. David's splashes of color reached the soul. My careful attention to human expression was apparently surface level. Over the next 2 years, as James and I grew closer and eventually married, his family's attitude remained consistently dismissive. They attended David's shows but were always busy when I had exhibitions. They bought David's paintings but never asked to see mine. When I won a regional portrait competition, Patricia's congratulations felt rehearsed. "How wonderful for you, dear." After we married, I needed a proper studio. My art had been gaining recognition. Steady sales through a downtown gallery, commissioned portraits, even a feature in Portland Monthly magazine. We found a converted warehouse space in southeast Portland with perfect northern exposure and high ceilings. "This is perfect for Isabella's studio," James told his parents during Sunday dinner. "She's been working out of our spare bedroom, but this will let her really expand." Patricia set down her fork carefully. "A whole studio seems like quite an expense for a hobby." A hobby. 2 years of marriage, dozens of sold paintings, magazine features, and she still saw my work as a hobby. "It's not a hobby, Mom," James defended me. "Isabella's a professional artist. She makes good money from her work." "Of course, dear," Patricia replied, but her tone suggested she was humoring us. Despite her disapproval, we signed the lease. I spent weeks setting up the studio and my work flourished in the new environment. I completed a series of urban portraits that captured Portland's diversity and energy. The gallery sold every piece within a month. I began getting commissions from collectors who specifically sought out my work. But success made Patricia's dismissal more pointed. When people mentioned my art at gatherings, she would change the subject to David's work. When I was featured in a prestigious downtown gallery show, she attended but spent the entire time discussing how David was preparing for something really significant. David, meanwhile, was struggling. His abstract work wasn't selling and the cafe shows were actually just coffee shop wall space. But in Patricia's narrative, David was the real artist facing challenges while I was somehow cheating by creating work people actually wanted to buy. The first direct challenge came last spring. David had been living at home using the garage as his workspace. Patricia decided he needed professional studio space to take his art to the next level. "Isabella's studio would be perfect for David," she announced during a family barbecue. "It has everything he needs." I laughed, thinking she was joking. "David's welcome to visit anytime, but it's my studio. I need the space for my work." Patricia's expression hardened. David is family. Surely family should support each other's artistic development. The conversation that followed was surreal. Patricia suggested I could share the studio with David, working around his schedule. When I pointed out that I had commissioned work and needed consistent access, she implied I was being selfish. "David's art is more experimental," she explained. "He needs room to explore. Your work is more Established. You could probably paint anywhere. Established. As if my years of developing technique made my work less deserving of proper space. James tried to mediate, suggesting David find his own studio nearby. But Patricia had fixated on my space specifically. Over the following weeks, the pressure intensified. Robert joined the campaign, mentioning how generous it would be for me to help David's career. Isabella doesn't understand what it's like to struggle as an artist, David said during one dinner. Everything comes easily to her. Everything came easily. 7 years of art school, 15 years of developing technique, countless rejections and slow career building. But because my work sold and his didn't, I was having it easy. The demands became more direct as summer progressed. Patricia began referring to David's future studio when talking about my space. She started bringing potential collectors to family gatherings and steering them toward David's work while avoiding mentions of mine. When I won a significant commission, portraits for a local law firm, Patricia's congratulations came with a suggestion. This success shows you don't really need that big studio anymore. You could work smaller and let David have the space. My success was being used as evidence that I should give up the resources that made it possible. The final confrontation came on a Saturday morning in late September. I was in my studio working on a complex portrait with a tight deadline, when I heard voices outside. Patricia's voice, sharp with authority. I don't care if she's working. This has gone on long enough. David's voice, whiny and entitled. She's had this space for over a year. It's my turn. I opened the door. Patricia stood there with David, both looking determined and guilty. What are you doing here? I asked. We need to talk, Patricia announced, pushing past me into the studio. The conversation that followed was manipulation disguised as family concern. Patricia had brought legal documents, papers that would transfer my studio lease to David. She'd researched the building's policies and discovered that with family signatures, the lease could be reassigned. David needs this space, she said, setting papers on my work table near my wet palette. Your art is doing well enough that you can afford somewhere else. This is about family supporting family. I stared at the documents, my signature line highlighted in yellow. You want me to give up my studio so David can have it. We want you to help your brother-in-law achieve his potential, Patricia corrected. You've had your time to establish yourself. Now it's David's turn. My time. As if artistic development was a resource to be shared equally rather than something earned through dedication. No, I said simply. Patricia blinked, clearly not expecting direct refusal. Excuse me. No, I repeated. I won't sign over my studio. David can find his own studio. What happened next revealed the true depth of their entitlement. Patricia's politeness evaporated, replaced by raw fury. You're being incredibly selfish, she hissed. David is family. Your success should benefit the whole family. David stepped forward, his face flushed. You think you're so much better because people buy your paintings. But your work isn't even real art. It's just copying what you see. Just copying. Years of studying light, composition, human expression, reduced to copying by someone whose work consisted of angry smears across canvas. Get out, I said quietly. We're not leaving until you sign these papers, Patricia declared. This family has supported you for years and now it's time to give back. Supported me. They'd attended exactly one of my shows, bought 0 pieces and spent 3 years undermining my credibility. I reached for my phone. I'm calling James. That's when Patricia lost control completely. She looked around my studio, at the paintings I was working on, the completed pieces waiting for delivery. Her expression shifted from anger to something colder. David's art matters more than yours, she said, her voice dropping to deadly calm. And if you won't recognize that willingly, maybe we need to help you understand. She picked up a palette knife from my work table and walked toward my easel. The palette knife sliced through the canvas I'd been working on, tearing the CEO's carefully rendered face from forehead to chin. The sound was like a physical blow. But she didn't stop there. Patricia grabbed a crowbar that another artist had left against the wall and began systematically destroying everything in my studio. David's art matters more than yours, she screamed, smashing the crowbar into completed portraits waiting for pickup. Canvas tore, frames splintered, paint scattered across the floor like blood. I watched in stunned silence as she destroyed painting after painting. A portrait of a local judge that had taken weeks. A series of neighborhood children commissioned as gifts. A self-portrait I'd painted during my engagement, capturing the happiness I'd felt at joining his family. David stood in the doorway, no longer protesting, just watching as his mother cleared the way for his artistic success. His expression wasn't horror, it was satisfaction mixed with guilt. The destruction lasted maybe 5 minutes but felt like hours. When Patricia finally stopped, breathing heavily, my studio looked like a crime scene. Torn canvas, broken frames, scattered paint, years of work reduced to debris. "There," she panted, dropping the crowbar. "Now you understand what really matters in this family." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, surrounded by wreckage, and felt something inside me shift permanently. Not break, shift. Like a bone setting itself after a fracture, harder than before. Patricia and David left without another word. Instead of calling James in tears, I pulled out my phone and called Elena Rodriguez, the owner of Rodriguez Gallery where I'd been showing my work for 3 years. "Elena," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I need you to come to my studio immediately. And bring a camera." Elena arrived 20 minutes later, took one look at the destruction, and started documenting everything with methodical precision. She photographed the destroyed paintings, the scattered materials, the crowbar still lying where Patricia had dropped it. "Isabella," she said softly, "do you know what they've done?" I shook my head. Beyond destroyed my work, I wasn't sure what she meant. Elena picked up a fragment of canvas, part of the judge's portrait. "This piece alone was worth $15,000. And this series," she gestured toward the destroyed children's portraits. "These were commissioned for $25,000 total." I stared at her, the numbers not computing through my shock. "Isabella," Elena continued urgently, "they've destroyed approximately $140,000 worth of completed and in-progress artwork. This isn't just vandalism, it's destruction of significant financial assets." $140,000. In their fury at my refusal, Patricia and David had destroyed more money than most people made in several years. But Elena wasn't finished. She pulled out her tablet, scrolling through digital files. "Do you realize what some of these destroyed pieces represent?" She showed me images from my recent exhibition, the urban portrait series that had sold out completely. The collectors who bought from that series have been asking about similar pieces. There's a waiting list. A waiting list. For my work. My supposedly inferior art that wasn't experimental enough. "Elena," I said slowly, "what exactly are you telling me?" She looked at me with the expression of someone delivering life-changing news. "I'm telling you that Patricia Walsh just destroyed the work of one of Portland's most promising emerging artists. The portrait series you were working on was pre-sold to collectors. Next month's exhibition was going to establish you as a significant regional artist." Next month's exhibition. In all the chaos, I'd forgotten. Elena had been planning a solo show. My first major solo exhibition. "The exhibition can still happen," Elena said firmly. "But not with these pieces. We'll need to decide how to proceed." That's when my phone rang. James calling from his hiking trip. I answered without saying hello. "Your mother destroyed my studio." Silence. Finally, James's voice, small and confused. "What do you mean, destroyed?" I looked around at the devastation. "I mean she took a crowbar to every painting while screaming about how David's art matters more than mine." "That's impossible. Mom would never." "Elena's here documenting everything for insurance and police reports," I continued. "She estimates about $140,000 in damage." Another long silence. "I'm coming home. Don't do anything until I get there. Don't do anything." As if there was some way to undo the destruction or restore months of work. I spent the rest of the day with Elena, cataloging the destruction and discussing options. She helped me understand that this wasn't just about lost paintings, it was about my position in the Portland art scene that Patricia had never grasped. "Isabella," Elena said as we finished documenting, "your mother-in-law didn't just destroy paintings. She destroyed pieces that were going to launch you into a different tier of recognition entirely." The irony was staggering. Patricia had destroyed my work to clear the way for David's success, not realizing she just eliminated one of the most promising careers in the local art scene. James arrived 3 hours later, his face pale as he took in the destruction. He walked through the debris like someone surveying a natural disaster. I don't understand, he kept saying. This isn't like her. Not violent, just entitled. Not destructive, just convinced that David's needs superseded everyone else's rights. That evening we met with Patricia and Robert. David was absent, probably realizing that witnessing the aftermath might be uncomfortable. Patricia had clearly spent the day crafting her defense. She greeted us with forced calm, offering coffee like we were there for a routine visit. I hope you've had time to think about what happened, she began. Family situations can become emotional, but... You destroyed $140,000 worth of artwork, I interrupted. The number hit the room like a bomb. Robert's coffee cup froze halfway to his lips. Patricia's composed expression flickered. That's ridiculous, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Those were just paintings. Just paintings. Elena's documentation folder sat between us. Photos of destroyed work, insurance estimates, market valuations. James opened the folder, showing his parents images of the destruction. Mom, look at this. Really look at what you did. Patricia glanced at the photos, then looked away quickly. I may have gotten carried away, but Isabella was being completely unreasonable. David needs support, Robert added. Isabella's already established. She can recover from this. She can recover from this. As if destroying someone's life work was a minor setback. That's when I realized they would never understand. In their minds, I was still the daughter-in-law whose success came too easily, whose career was less valid than David's struggles. I'm filing police reports and insurance claims, I said calmly. Elena is helping me document everything for potential legal action. Patricia's composure finally cracked. You're going to sue us? Over some paintings. Some paintings. Even now, she couldn't acknowledge the magnitude of her actions. I'm going to hold you accountable for destroying my livelihood, I corrected. 3 months later, the consequences have become clear. The insurance investigation determined that Patricia's destruction constituted willful vandalism. Her homeowner's insurance won't cover the claims, leaving her personally liable for the full value. Elena postponed my solo exhibition but didn't cancel it. Instead, she's been working with me to create new pieces that incorporate the story of the destruction itself. The exhibition, now titled Reconstruction, opens next month and has already generated significant media attention. Collectors who had been interested before are now actively seeking pieces, partly because of the notoriety but mostly because Elena positioned me as an artist who emerged stronger from adversity. David never got my studio. The other artists in the building made it clear he wasn't welcome. He's back to working in his parents' garage, his experiments now competing with their legal bills. James and I are in counseling, working through the trauma of his family's betrayal. Some days I think we'll make it. Other days, the weight of knowing his mother destroyed years of my work feels too heavy to carry. But my art survives. Changed, evolved, marked by the experience but not destroyed by it. Patricia taught me something valuable about the difference between family that supports you and family that consumes you. She thought she was clearing the way for David's success. Instead, she revealed the true value of what she tried to destroy and gave me the freedom to build something even stronger. The crowbar is gone, but the art remains. Scarred, reconstructed, but undeniably mine.